went to college for marketing,
Hmm.
was the goal to eventually utilize that to kind of get into the family business, or was it like I don't want to deal with anything, title related? Because I've had several
Yeah.
real estate agents on here that their
Mhm.
parents were agents, and
Yeah.
it's been like split 50-50. They're like,
Yeah.
no, I never wanted to get into it, and now they are
Mhm.
into it, or it was like, oh yeah, like I loved it, and that's what I was
Yeah.
gonna do.
It's a great question. I knew from early on that I really was a people person. I liked being around others. Marketing seemed to be kind of that business gateway to that, to sales, to I really wasn't into the market research, the marketing, that side of it. So when I applied for jobs out of college, or I was in college, I looked at a few marketing companies. The end goal was not to work at my parents' place, and it wasn't because I didn't want to. I just had my maiden name's Jones, and that Jones part of me was like, I can do this on my own. I can get my own job. I can do my thing, and so uh, Todd interviewed with Allstate on campus, and he was interviewing for a claims job. And during the interview, he said, well, you've got to meet my girlfriend. She would be great in sales. So, had an interview with Allstate. We both got hired on at Allstate, and we moved to Toledo after graduation. That's where our jobs took us. So, he was in claims. I had worked temporarily with another agent, and then they're like, hey, you should have your own office, right? So I set up for them an office in Perrysburg. And about a year into it, rookie of the year, all this stuff, and I wasn't making any money. It just was really a tough time. Todd, was in claims and had he paid for most of the meals. So we were at this time. So Todd and I grew up together. That's another thing that I should fill in. I've known him since second grade, and so um, we did not date all that time, but now we're at a point where like, okay, we probably should get married, right? So we got engaged in March of 91, and we both knew we didn't want a long engagement. So we got married that year in October. So
Mm.
our 31st anniversary is coming up this October.
Congratulations.
Yes. And, but we figured out what our short amount of time, and no offense to those in Toledo, but we didn't want to live in Toledo. So we started looking for out of Allstate to either stay with them and open places back in the Akron Canton area. Both of our families are there. We thought to start our life, why prolong it? We really want to be back in Akron
Sure.
Canton area. So we got married in October, and they had uh, at the time when I moved back right before we got married. There were no jobs at Allstate. They were really kind of going through this change between, like they do very often. They're going to take the agency away, whatever. Anyway, long story short, I had been working at the title company, my parents at Commerce Title, over the years, answering the phone, all these things. And my dad said, hey, we need help. Go to Fairlawn, help out, and I excelled. Like I loved it. Clients loved, the agents and the mortgage people loved me because I was, a people person and
Yeah.
doing a task that most don't, they get it done. And I have the gift to gab and chat with people. So it just turned into this like, okay, this kind of works. And I loved it. So I was pretty much that's where I landed. Todd, there was a hiring and transfer freeze at that time in the 90s with Allstate, and a lot of the companies had done that. So he had interviewed with, we had a great friend that was at Nationwide, and he said, Todd, I can get you in, I can get you a job, this whole thing. What are you doing after you get married? And so, mind you, he's in Toledo, I'm in Akron at the time, and we get married. And so he had an interview right before we got married, actually the day before our wedding. He had an interview, and they said at Nationwide, we're going to get you in. Don't get an apartment. And we're like, okay. Don't sign a lease is basically what they said. So we had decided we were going to live in Norwalk, Milan, Ohio, which is just south of Sandusky. And he would drive to Toledo, and I was driving to Akron every day. And we did that. We lived in the O'Connell Lodge right on 250. And we thought it would just be for a couple weeks. Well, that we got married in October, went on our honeymoon, came back, and we were still hanging out at the O'Connell Lodge until May. And then and every week, or every couple of weeks, Nationwide would be like, hey, we're almost there, we just need to get through budget, whatever, all these things. So we lived in a hotel. We had never opened a lot of our wedding gifts, like they were sold to my parents, like this whole thing. It was just dysfunctional as it could get. I was very busy at the title company. It was during a refi boom in 92, 93. Those that have been in the business for a while will remember that. And I was working night and day and loving it, but, really wasn't a new wife kind of thing, right? So long story short, we rent an apartment, we get a townhouse, and within that week that we moved in, our parents moved us in. Todd got the call. So we packed up all our stuff, and we lived with my mom and dad that summer. And we actually bought one of the parade of homes in the fall. And so we had that house and moved in there, lived there, had Brock a year later. Or had Brock, no, we didn't have Brock until 94. So, and then a year later after that, we moved into another home in 97. Liz was born. And from there, we came to Columbus in 05. So through Nationwide.
I was gonna say just job relocation.
Yeah.
And then so did you so in 05, did you then just stay in title? Is that kind of like the path that you just stuck with?
Yes. Or? So good question. So 05, when we moved down here. So prior to us moving, our company transitioned. My dad had sold it to First American. He was starting into semi-retirement. I had moved through management, sales, really was doing a lot with the company. And when we moved in 05, I really wasn't sure if I was going to work. We were moving down here. It was okay. Let's, really focus on our family and Todd. And then First American called me from Columbus and said, hey, we need some help. We just lost a rep. And I didn't know anybody. I mean, when I tell you I didn't know anybody in Columbus, I knew the only person and one of the first people I got to meet was Joyce Reinhardt, because she had worked for good friends of ours in the title business. And he said, you got to get with Joyce, and Joyce used to work for this guy. So she was one of the first people that I actually met in Columbus, but I literally knew no one. And I thought, well, okay, I'll go, I can do sales. I've done sales all my life. And I think one of the coolest things that we have in Columbus, that in the real estate community, that other places do not have, are those weekly meetings. And what a jump start that gave me to get to know people. But, when we moved down here, I told First American, I said, I'm going to take my kids to school and I'm going to pick my kids up after school, and you'll get me between those times. And they're like, we don't care. It's good. And I had been very successful up in Akron, and
Yeah.
accolades for, salesperson, of Ohio and that kind of stuff. So I had a good reputation, I guess. So they were like, whatever you give us will be great. Right. So, and I stuck, I stuck to that, even though the kids will say, well, you're the last one to get me, this whole thing.
I'm
They
just
always,
running 10 minutes late. It's okay.
yeah,
I'm there
right,
though.
right. I'm like, listen, you're fine. You're safe. But so I did that through, I was with First American, and where you and I picked up is when I went to Talon.
Yep.
And with Talon, I had more of an opportunity to really do what I loved, and that was building a branch, being really involved from the start. I mean, when we reopened the Talon office for in Dublin, it there was, we had no furniture. Like, I love that part of it.
Yeah.
I love the idea of building something and starting from scratch. So it was really, it fulfilled me. It really did. And Talent, from a standpoint of the marketing piece, for years, I was creating marketing for agents, and that was really perfect for me in that role. Prior to the internet, we did postcards and we did
Yeah.
the Haynes directory, and we would look up addresses for people, and I did that in Akron. So really helping agents grow their business was my wheelhouse. So it made sense with Talon that they were doing that, and that worked for me as well. So it was good. It was
Oh,
really
that's
good.
awesome.